The vast arena floated in the void between stars, a colossal structure of shimmering metal and crackling energy fields. Its walls pulsed with light, the crowd's roars echoing through the endless expanse. This was the Pantheon Tournament, i.e., spectacle as old as the oldest civilizations, a battle where the galaxy's mightiest champions fought not just for glory, but for survival. In the grandstands, species from all corners of the galaxy gathered. Towering Sithar with scales that gleamed like molten silver, the shadowy and graceful Velry, whose eyes shimmered like twin suns, and the massive Cruxians, their muscles bulging beneath tough chitin armor. None could match the size and power of their champions. They towered over their human counterparts, some easily 3 times taller and twice as broad. Yet here they were, watching a lone human stride forward. Major Rafe Navarro, once a soldier of Earth's forgotten wars, now an interstellar outcast. His armor was a patchwork of scavenged tech and worn leather, his face marked by scars and a stubborn jawline set against a mocking crowd. Where others flaunted weapons forged in star cores, Rafe carried only a battered combat knife and an ancient relic, a faded pendant bearing the image of a mythic Earth warrior. The galaxy's elite whispered and laughed. The puny Earth ape dares enter the Pantheon. His myths are dust, his strength negligible. Rafe heard none of it. His gaze swept over the crowd, unflinching. Years of fighting alongside human legends had forged his spirit. He carried the weight of stories his people believed in, tales of gods walking the earth, heroes who battled monsters, men who bent fate with nothing but their courage. The announcer's voice boomed over the arena. Next match, Rafe Navarro, of Earth versus Krolthar, the Cruxian warbeast. The giant stepped forward, a mountain of muscle, claws the size of daggers, eyes blazing with cruelty. The ground trembled beneath his heavy steps. His voice was a guttural roar. "You will be crushed like the insects you are." Rafe smiled, an expression more of defiance than fear. The arena doors slid open. A whirl of energy formed the battlefield. Jagged rocks, ancient ruins, and a crackling river of blue plasma slicing through the center. The crowd held their breath as the champions took their positions. Krolthar charged first, a tidal wave of brute force. His massive fists smashed the rocks where Rafe had stood moments before, sending shards flying like deadly knives. Rafe dodged with uncanny speed, weaving through the chaos, his body moving on instinct and hard training. The Cruxian snarled and swung again, this time aiming to crush Rafe's midsection. But the human rolled aside and plunged his knife into Krolthar's exposed flank. A hiss of surprise echoed through the giant's mouth. The crowd erupted in laughter. Was this all the famed Earth champion had? A simple stab? But then Rafe's eyes burned with something fierce, something ancient. He gripped Krolthar's arm and twisted, using the giant's momentum against him. The Cruxian stumbled, surprised by the human's strength. Rafe's voice rang out low and steady. "Hercules didn't back down, neither will I." Summoning every ounce of his strength, Rafe shoved Krolthar into the plasma river. The searing energy screamed as it licked the Cruxian's flesh. But instead of panic, Krolthar bellowed, then flailed, desperate to escape. Rafe didn't relent. He hauled Krolthar's massive frame from the plasma, locking the giant's arm behind his back. The crowd was silent now, disbelief thick, in the air. With a final surge, Rafe slammed Krolthar's head against a rock. The warlord's knees buckled, defeated. Rafe stood, breathing heavily, his eyes blazing. The laughter had died, replaced by stunned silence. The announcer's voice was barely audible. "Victory to Earth." As the gates closed behind him, Rafe felt the weight of countless eyes. The galaxy didn't believe in human myths, but for the first time they were forced to wonder, what if those stories were true, and more dangerously, what if the warrior who believed in them truly was? The arena's energy hummed low now, the crowd dispersing with a mix of shock and curiosity. Some were whispering, others exchanging uneasy glances. How had a mere human done what should have been impossible? Rafe Navarro had just shattered centuries of arrogance with brute force and something no one quite understood. Backstage, the sterile lights of the holding chambers flickered as Rafe sat on a cold metal bench, his chest heaving. He wiped blood from a cut on his brow and touched the faded pendant hanging from his neck, the image of a warrior crowned with stars and fire. The pendant was old, nearly broken, but it held memories of a world long lost to most. A soft voice broke the silence. "You fight with stories," said the alien scientist, her eyes gleaming with curiosity rather than scorn. She was small, with translucent skin that shimmered faintly like liquid crystal, and her name was Dr. Valira. Rafe looked up, surprised. "Stories? Myths?" he said, voice rough. "You don't understand. These aren't just tales. They're maps. Maps to strength, to survival. We learn from them, how to endure, how to conquer pain, how to stand when everything wants you to fall." Valira nodded slowly. "I have studied champions from dozens of species. None exhibit what you do, your physiology. It changes when you invoke your myths. Your adrenaline spikes to levels previously unknown. Your muscle fibers regenerate rapidly after injury. It is inexplicable." Rafe smiled grimly. "That's because it's not just physiology. It's belief. Our minds can push our bodies beyond limits. The legends gave us a way to tap into something deeper. Something the universe forgot." Valira studied him quietly, then asked, "Do you truly believe those stories? Or are they a kind of training, a ritual to prepare you for battle?" Rafe's gaze darkened with memories of his childhood, of nights spent listening to his grandmother's voice telling stories of Hercules, Beowulf, and the Monkey King, Sun Wukong. "I believe because we have to. When you're outnumbered, outgunned, when the odds say you don't stand a chance, you believe in something greater than yourself. That belief becomes your armor." Valira's expression shifted from curiosity to something more serious. "You may be the first living proof that stories are more than allegories. You are a phenomenon." Across the arena, word of Rafe's victory spread like wildfire. Alien spectators debated loudly, some dismissive, others unsettled. A group of Cruxian warlords growled, nursing bruised egos. "No myth should best a Cruxian," snarled one. Meanwhile, a secretive faction of galactic elites watched closely from their floating citadel. They whispered of myth-born humans and the dangers they posed. If Rafe could harness belief as power, what could that mean for the established order? Meanwhile, Rafe wandered the maze of corridors, muscles aching but his mind sharp. He replayed the fight in his head, analyzing every moment. His combat training was solid, but the edge, something raw and primal, had come from within. He found a quiet alcove and closed his eyes. There, he whispered the names of heroes long dead. Samson. Kalikuchulin. With each name, his breath steadied, his heartbeat slowed, and an invisible energy seemed to gather around him. Moments later, a squad of soldiers arrived to escort him to the next match. The murmurs from the crowd had shifted from mockery to speculation. He was no longer a joke, but Rafe felt the weight of expectation and danger growing heavier. The galaxy was vast and brutal. His opponents would come with tricks, weapons, and powers no human had ever faced before. Yet, inside him, the old stories whispered louder than ever. A warrior is not defined by strength alone, but by the fire in his heart, and Rafe Navarro was ready to ignite that fire. The next opponent was unlike any Rafe had faced. Seraphine, the telekinetic queen of the Ethereum Empire, undefeated for centuries. Her reputation was legendary. She wielded her mind like a blade, bending reality to her will. No physical weapon could harm her. No conventional attack could touch her. The arena transformed for their battle. Floating platforms shimmered in midair, shifting unpredictably as Seraphine's psychic power warped the space around her. The crowd buzzed with excitement, confident the human would be crushed like all others before him. Rafe, however, stood calm and steady. His battle-scarred eyes scanned the shifting terrain, measuring the invisible forces at play. He didn't flinch as the first psychic blasts tore through the air. tearing chunks from the platforms around him. The pain was immediate. His skin prickled with the raw force of Seraphine's assault. His muscles screamed, bones rattled, but beneath it all, something deeper stirred. A burning rage, primal and fierce. "Your mind tricks don't scare me," Rafe growled, voice low. "I've faced monsters with claws sharper than your thoughts." Seraphine smirked, her voice a melodious echo in his mind. "You're only a man. I am a goddess." The crowd watched, mesmerized, as Rafe took blow after invisible blow, staggering but refusing to fall. He whispered under his breath, "Beowulf stood against the sea monster. So do I." With a guttural roar, he charged, closing the distance. In a heartbeat, Seraphine unleashed a final wave of psychic energy. An invisible hammer aimed to crush his chest. Rafe's world exploded with agony, his lungs burning as if filled with fire. Yet with every step forward, his fists tightened. His body seemed to channel every ounce of human endurance ever told in the old stories. Then, he landed a blow, a raw, brutal punch to her temple that shattered her psychic shield. The Ethereum Queen faltered, her eyes wide with disbelief. Rafe seized the moment, grappling her in a struggle of wills and strength. The crowd gasped as Seraphine's graceful form faltered, and the queen who had never lost stumbled to the ground, defeated. Silence fell. For the first time, the Pantheon crowd saw the myth-born human not just survive, but conquer. Backstage, Valera was already running data through her equipment, her face pale. "This is impossible," she muttered. "His body shouldn't withstand psychic trauma like that. Something else is happening. Something mythic." Rafe collapsed into a seat, every muscle screaming. He traced the worn pendant around his neck and murmured the names of heroes past, grounding himself in their strength. Across the galaxy, whispers began anew. This human wasn't just lucky or tough, he was something else. Some began to fear that humanity's myths might actually hold power, tangible power. In the depths of the Pantheon's council chambers, high-ranking elders debated heatedly. If this continues, the balance of power will shift, warned an ancient Sithar general. The humans are not just animals, they are catalysts. An elder Velry diplomat's voice was cold and measured. "We dismissed their stories as primitive nonsense, but the warrior proves we were wrong. This changes everything." For Rafe, none of this mattered. The stories he carried were not trophies, but lifelines. They reminded him why he fought, not for glory, but to prove humanity was more than a footnote in the galaxy's history. He rose slowly, shoulders aching but spirit unbroken. The next round loomed, darker and deadlier. His opponents would come armed with tricks and powers beyond imagination, but Rafe's mind was clear. "I am no mere man," he vowed silently. "I am the echo of heroes who never died. I am the myth made flesh." The arena's light dimmed as Rafe was escorted through a labyrinth of corridors, cold, metallic, and humming with ancient power. Despite his physical exhaustion, his mind raced, grappling with the mounting realization that his fight was no longer just for survival. It had become a symbol of something far greater. Back in the sterile laboratory adjacent to the arena, Dr. Valera paced nervously before a holographic display. She projected scans of Rafe's body, revealing patterns no one had seen before, bursts of adrenal response, rapid muscle repair, and neural activity that surged with the rhythm of ancient rhythms, not merely biological reflexes, but something cultural, primal. The more she studied, the more she became convinced that human myths were not merely stories. They were encoded blueprints for survival, etched deep in DNA like forgotten commands waiting to be activated. Her colleague, a grizzled Scythar scientist named Kael'thor, scoffed. "Fables don't make warriors, evolution does." Valera shook her head. "This is something else. The man channels his heritage like a living weapon. His mind and body synchronize in ways we don't understand. It's as if the myths themselves breathed life inside him." Meanwhile, the Galactic Council gathered, tense and divided. The humans, long dismissed as primitive, were proving unpredictable and dangerous. The elders debated a dark possibility. What if belief itself was a power, one that could unravel centuries of galactic order? In a secluded chamber, Rafe sat alone, tracing the pendant's worn edges. Memories flooded back, his grandmother's voice telling stories by firelight, tales of men who faced gods and monsters alike. Myths, she had said, are not lies, but truths wrapped in symbols. Suddenly, a whisper echoed in his mind. Not alien, not mechanical, but ancient and familiar. It was the voice of his own ancestors, calling from the depths of time. Rafe clenched his fists. The line between legend and reality was blurring. He stood and approached the arena's training grounds, where holographic images of past champions flickered silently. Here, he meditated, summoning the spirits of heroes past. Samson's strength, Kaylee's fury, Ku Chulin's unyielding will. As he focused, his body surged with energy, and the wounds of battle began to knit beneath his skin. The stories were not just memories, they were a living force. But even as he grew stronger, enemies conspired. In the shadows, rival champions met in hushed voices. The human's power is unnatural, hissed one. We must end him before he becomes unstoppable. An assassin cloaked in shifting shadows was dispatched with a single mission: infiltrate Rafe's quarters and eliminate the threat. Yet as the assassin approached, the air around Rafe shimmered. His senses, honed by centuries of mythic tradition, detected the danger. Calm and ready, he caught the intruder before a blade could strike. With a swift, brutal move, Rafe subdued the attacker. His voice was low, but fierce. You forget. Human. Legends never die quietly. News of the failed assassination spread rapidly. The galaxy was waking to a terrifying truth. The myths had awakened something in humanity that even the gods of the pantheon feared. In the council chambers, a heavy silence fell. We cannot let this human rewrite destiny, an elder declared. We must act. But Rafe's path was clear. The myths were guiding him, pulling him forward into a future where belief could shatter chains and forge legends anew. As he prepared for the battles ahead, Rafe whispered a vow to the void. Am the warrior of myth and blood. I will make the impossible real. The sterile chill of the infirmary wrapped around Rafe like a coffin. The metallic walls reflected the harsh white lights, but no brightness could reach the darkness settling in his mind. He lay on the narrow cot, every muscle aching, every breath a struggle. They had tried to kill him. The poison was slow and insidious, seeping into his veins, blurring his vision and sapping his strength. An enemy's hand had slipped past the guards, a silent blade coated with venom designed to break even the toughest warriors. It wasn't just a physical attack, it was a message. Humans don't belong here, whispered the nurse droid. Her mechanical voice cold and indifferent as she administered the antidote. You will die or become a warning. But Rafe wasn't ready to die. Not now. As the toxin ravaged his body, his mind retreated to the one place he always returned. The stories. His grandmother's voice echoed in his memories. A hero is not the one who never falls, but the one who rises again when the world says no. Pain twisted his body into knots. His vision swam with flashes of ancient battles. Heroes battered and broken, but unyielding. Samson, blinded but mighty. The phoenix burning to ashes only to rise anew. These stories weren't just fables. They were lifelines. His fingers grazed the pendant, warm despite the chill. He whispered the names of warriors past, drawing strength. From legends etched into his soul. Sun Wukong, he muttered. The Monkey King never surrendered. The antidote slowly fought the poison's grip, but the poison had already seeded doubt and fear. Would he be strong enough to return? Could belief truly overcome venom? Hours bled into days. The crowd outside the arena buzzed with rumors. Some whispered that the human was finished, that the myths had been broken. Others clung to hope, inspired by the warrior's stubborn refusal to yield. Valira visited often, her concern growing deeper. Your body fights a war on its own, she said softly. But your mind is what's keeping you alive. Rafe met her gaze, his voice, a raspy whisper. It's never just the body, it's the fire inside, that's what makes legends. When his strength began to return, Rafe demanded to train. The medics protested, he was still weak, but he was relentless. He pushed through the pain, driven by something beyond flesh and blood. One evening, as the arena's moons cast a pale light through the infirmary's windows, Rafe rose from his cot. Each step was agony, but every heartbeat reminded him of what was at stake. The myths, he said aloud, they don't end with defeat. Word reached the council chambers. The human champion was alive. Worse, he was coming back stronger. Furious, some plotted anew. The poison had failed, but the war was far from over. Back in the training hall, Rafe faced his reflection. Scarred, exhausted, but unbroken. I am not just a man, he vowed. I am the echo of every hero who refused to quit. As his body mended, so too did his resolve. The poison had tested his limits and revealed the truth. Belief was more than strength. It was survival. The arena was alive with electricity, anticipation thick in the air as thousands gathered once more to witness the rising myth, the human warrior, Rafe Navarro. His return was more than a spectacle. It was a challenge to every champion who believed the galaxy was theirs by right. Today's opponent was a fearsome adversary, Varric the Flameborn, a towering creature from the volcanic world of Pyrath, whose body burned with molten veins and whose fists struck like volcanic eruptions. No champion had ever bested Varric without burning. The crowd roared as the battle commenced, heat rippling through the arena, sparks flying from the ground with each blow. Varric's molten fists smashed into the terrain, sending geysers of flame, shooting skyward. His voice was a growl of molten rock. You will be ash beneath my feet, human. Rafe wiped the sweat from his brow, the scent of sulfur thick in the air. He felt the lingering effects of the poison in his veins, but his spirit burned hotter still. The stories, his anchor, fueled him. He recalled the legend of the phoenix, the immortal bird of fire, reborn from its own ashes. I will rise, he whispered, flexing his hands. As long as there is breath, there is hope. Varric charged with a blazing fist, the heat threatening to scorch everything near. Rafe dodged, narrowly avoiding the inferno. Each movement was a dance of life and death, the heat searing his skin. But Rafe fought differently than other champions. His attacks were precise, driven by more than strength. They carried the weight of stories. He dodged and weaved, striking at pressure points, exploiting weaknesses that only a warrior who understood balance and patience could find. Varric bellowed, flames erupting in a furious wave meant to engulf Rafe completely. But Rafe dove into the flames, unyielding. His skin blistered, burning pain igniting through him, but he pushed forward, clutching his pendant tightly. Not even fire can stop me, he grunted, landing a solid strike to Varric's molten chest. The crowd gasped, some cheering, others stunned into silence. Varric faltered, molten rock cracking beneath the blow. Rafe seized the moment, channeling every ounce of energy into a final move. An upward strike, inspired by the legends of mighty heroes breaking through impossible odds. Varric crashed back, his flames sputtering, his roar fading. As the dust settled, Rafe stood victorious. Breathing hard, the heat still radiating off his body, he looked to the crowd. His voice carried across the arena, clear and strong. Myth is not just story, it is truth waiting to be found. But victory brought no rest. Behind the scenes, the Council of Elders convened in urgent whispers. The human champion was more than a fighter. He was a symbol of change, a harbinger of upheaval. The myths grant him power no one can match, warned the oldest elder. If he survives the final trial, the galaxy will never be the same. Rafe, meanwhile, felt the weight of their gaze but refused to waver. The final challenge loomed, a gauntlet rumored to test not just strength, but spirit and mind. He knew The greatest battle was yet to come. As night fell, Rafe looked up at the stars beyond the arena dome and whispered, "The stories are with me. I am ready." The arena had transformed overnight. Where once stood an open coliseum now loomed a labyrinth, dark, twisting, and fraught with dangers born of ancient technology and raw power. This was the final test, the Gauntlet of Legends. It was said to be a trial only the gods themselves could survive, designed to break the spirit of even the fiercest champions. Rafe stepped into the shifting maze, each step echoing against stone and steel. The air smelled of ozone and smoke, electric sparks dancing along the walls. He was alone save for the whispered voices of the myths that guided him. At the entrance, a spectral figure appeared, an ethereal projection of an ancient hero, its eyes blazing with unearthly fire. "Only those who carry the truth of their legends may pass," it intoned, voice booming and hollow. "Will you falter or rise as the stories say?" Rafe's heart pounded. The myths had brought him this far. He clenched his fists, feeling the pulse of history in his veins. "I will rise," he answered. The maze reacted instantly. Walls shifted, corridors narrowed, and the air thickened with unseen threats. His first challenge was a chasm that yawned like the mouth of a beast. On the other side, faint images flickered, visions of heroes who had leapt into the unknown and survived. Rafe gathered his strength, remembering the tale of Beowulf crossing treacherous waters to face Grendel. He ran, leapt, and soared through the air, landing hard but steady. The crowd's distant cheers echoed in his mind, but here, in the silence, only the stories mattered. Deeper in the maze, he faced illusions, visions of fear and doubt, faces of lost comrades, whispers of failure. The walls whispered, trying to drown his resolve. "Give up," hissed a voice like a serpent. "You cannot win." Rafe steadied his breath. He whispered the mantra of the Monkey King. "I am more than flesh. I am spirit." The illusions shattered, replaced by the burning light of his inner fire. Next came the trial of strength, a monstrous beast made of shifting metal and shadow, its eyes glowing with malice. The creature lunged, a living nightmare born from the fears of fallen champions. Rafe dodged, drawing on the memory of Samson's final stand. With every blow he absorbed, his resolve hardened. He struck back with relentless fury, each punch echoing with the might of every warrior who had ever refused to surrender. The battle was brutal and raw. Metal screeched, sparks flew, and muscles tore. But Rafe's spirit burned brighter than ever. With one final thunderous strike, he shattered the beast into fragments of light and shadow. Exhausted but undefeated, Rafe pressed onward. At the heart of the maze, the final challenge awaited. A mirror, ancient and cracked, reflecting not just his image but his deepest fears and doubts. The spectral hero's voice echoed again, softer now. "What do you see, human?" Rafe stared into the glass. He saw pain, loss, and the shadow of death. But beneath it all, he saw something else. A warrior forged in fire, unbroken and unyielding. "I see a man," he said quietly, "who carries the weight of all his stories. I see a myth made real." The mirror shimmered and dissolved, revealing the exit. As Rafe stepped out, the arena erupted in thunderous applause. The impossible had been done. The myths had not only survived, they had triumphed. The roaring crowd was a tidal wave of sound, crashing against the walls of the Pantheon arena. The air was electric, alive with awe and disbelief. Rafe Navarro stood in the center, breathing heavily, his body battered, but his spirit soaring. He had done the impossible. He had survived the gauntlet of legends, defied every expectation, and shattered the old order. The Galactic Council watched from their high seats, faces etched with a mixture of fear, respect, and reluctant admiration. The ancient laws and hierarchies they'd upheld for centuries were now threatened by one human's raw mythic power. The Pantheon was no longer theirs alone. Valira approached, eyes shining with wonder. "You've proven that myths are more than stories," They are the very fabric of existence, threads woven into the soul of a warrior. Rafe nodded, exhaustion making his voice hoarse. They are who we are. Every legend is a spark that ignites the fire inside us, and that fire can never be extinguished. Across the arena, former champions, some defeated, others watching in stunned silence, bowed their heads in respect. The myths Rafe had carried with him were not just human tales. They were universal truths about courage, hope, and the strength to rise when all seems lost. But even in victory, Rafe knew the battle was not over. The council's leader, an imposing figure cloaked in robes of starlight, stepped forward. His voice was deep, resonant. Human Rafe Navarro, you have surpassed every challenge and rewritten the limits of what we believed possible. But power without wisdom can become a threat to all. What will you do with this power? Rafe's eyes scanned the crowd, then fixed on the council. I fight not for power, but for a future where stories can inspire all beings, where myths are bridges, not barriers. The galaxy is vast, and no one species owns the truth. Murmurs rippled through the audience. For the first time, they glimpsed a future shaped by unity, forged by respect for all cultures and their legends. The council leader studied him, then nodded slowly. Then you shall be named the champion of the Pantheon, not to rule, but to remind us all of the power that belief and courage hold. The arena erupted in celebration. Rafe's victory was more than a title. It was a beacon. As the festivities died down, Rafe looked up at the stars once more. His journey had started, as a dismissed human with nothing but myths to lean on. Now he was a living legend. In the quiet moments before dawn, he whispered a final vow. The myths will never die, as long as there are warriors to carry them. And somewhere deep in the endless galaxy, the echoes of ancient stories stirred, waiting to inspire the next generation of heroes.